Hello and welcome everyone. This is the video for the introduction to the Paws family. Now we decided to do a video instead of typing up an entire page on the About section. So, yeah. For those of you who don't know us already, the reason why I'm using a lot of plural nouns is because of one rather simple thing, and that is because we are a system. Excuse my horrible handwriting, that's just how I write. For those of you who don't understand what that means, I'm going to put it more into a little bit easier words. So a system, is, you have this part, this part, this part, and they all link together, right? And they all work together so that they all work, right? In this particular context, our system works more like this. So we have one main person, right? And that's the host body. That is the actual physical body. And then you have multiple other people, personalities. And each of those personalities is inside of the host body. We're going to do this. And in medical terminology, this is denoted by two different words. You have DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, and you have MPD, which is multiple personality disorder. Now, personally, us as a family, we drop the D's. In fact, we don't even use DID at this point. What we use is MP, and that's for multiple, that was a horrible spelling, multiple personalities. Quick writing. And that's, again, that comes back to the system. You have one body with multiple people. We're going to try and keep this video shorter, but as we go through and explain stuff, it might get more and more complicated. Feel free to pause, come back later when you need to. But let's keep going. So our main host body is Merlin. That's our host. He is a male. The body is male, if you can't tell by the voice. Merlin is both the host and a personality. We refer to him as the host because he's the main personality. You'll notice I'll be saying it in a third person. That's because Merlin right now isn't quite available. He gets very shy with videos, so but yeah, Merlin is, so pretty much, I could pretty much say on average all of us are going to be furries. And if you don't know what that is, I can explain that for you. That's people who either believe or, for lack of a better term, subscribe to the idea that they are animals. Again, this is my personal take on it, so don't be offended if I totally throw it out. Or say something totally wrong. You can always correct me, I understand that. But furries are anthropomorphic people, and that means animals with very human-like bodies. So, to kind of bring this back to the main point here, Merlin is a fox, actually. A red fox, both literally and figuratively. His main color is red, blue eyes, so on and so forth. I'm sorry, I just have to get rid of this. We're going to move on to the second category here. I have a list to make sure that I cover everything because I know that I won't always. So, Merlin is a fox. We're going to move on to the next category here, which is personality. Merlin is, he's the soft, cuddly one. So, he loves cuddles. He's a sweetheart. He tries to be nice to everyone. Obviously, it doesn't work out. But yeah. Now we're going to give you one fun fact about each personality. And for Merlin, that's the fact that his favorite food is actually Chinese food. Well, the genre Chinese food. He's loved that forever. He just loves it. Going on into more of the channel-wise, a lot of Merlin's videos are going to be gaming, kind of random Mishigas videos. He doesn't have really one particular interest. But yeah. So now with Merlin out of the way, so that's Merlin, right? Cute, cuddly fox. We're going to move on to me over here, who is James. This is actually an old picture, because before I used to be a wolf. So, a wolf. I have since transitioned into being a rabbit. So, a lot of people like to make jokes about that. My traditional build is more, darker red fur with black fur. A lot of that. We'll move on to personality here now that I've covered that. Personality-wise, I like to think of myself as a little bit more of a mad scientist. I'm a tinkerer. I like to analyze stuff, like to figure out, what's going on. Favorite subject in school is obviously math. I'm a huge math geek. I'm just a geek and a nerd in general, but yeah. For those of you who don't know or haven't heard me before, I do actually have an accent. It's not the one I'm using right now. This is the body's voice. But I do actually have an accent. It's been described as Irish, sometimes British, actually. But a lot Irish, British, kind of right in there. Please don't be offended if it doesn't at all sound like that. This is, in my personal opinion, it's both a way to differentiate me from everyone else, but also it's my little thing. I have an accent. That's how it is. The fun fact about me is that my favorite movie series of all time is Lord of the Rings. I would binge watch that forever if I could. I love Lord of the Rings. So, yeah. A lot of my videos are going to be based around mostly gaming. I'm a huge gamer. I love survival games. So you'll be seeing me doing, Minecraft videos, anything like that. To be honest, I'm actually running a Minecraft series. So if you already know about that, great. Sorry if I yawn occasionally. Sometimes the body's not quite in tune with the brain. But yeah, from here we're going to move over to Luke. Now Luke is an interesting species. Luke's particular species is one that I've personally made for him. It might be a bit of a knockoff, but it's a Dracokami, and that's a combination of Latin for dragon or Draco, and Okami, which is Japanese for wolf. Forgive me if my translations are bad, but I'm only barely learning languages right now. But what he is a dragon-wolf hybrid. The majority of his body is more wolf. He has horns. He has dragon wings. Sorry while I write that. But dragon wings, he has a scaled chest. So he has the scales running down his chest like a normal dragon. He has a scaled tail, all of that. A lot of his color scheme is based around dark greens and blacks, rather similar. I usually refer to him as a brother. You're going to notice a lot of time in the family we refer to each other in those kind of brother-sister ideas. Siblings. We all have a pretty good relationship with each other, so we try to keep that going. Luke's personality-wise is much more laid-back, calm. He's not hugely talkative, but when he does talk, it's... the way I'm going to think of this is, if you've ever watched Lord of the Rings, right? Think of the Ents. So they take a long time to say something, so unless it's worth saying, they won't say it. Luke's in that same area where, he'll talk and say stuff, but he's not much one for small talk. Sure, he will do it, but usually he likes to dig a little bit deeper, for lack of a better term. He is calmer than most of us, and this is, that's just how he is. He's a lot more laid back. A little bit further into that, he does have some social anxiety. Math, work with me. So generally, he doesn't like to be in large groups. That can kind of freak him out. So yeah. The fun fact about Luke is that he loves the outdoors. So he loves to go out there, he loves to go hiking, backpacking, kayaking, anything like that. He just loves being outside in the wilderness. Channel-wise, Luke may or may not do videos. If he does, that's great. Don't expect him to show up too often. And I say that because of his social anxiety. Me, myself, I get kind of nervous every time I do these videos, and for him that's turned up to 1100. But yeah, so don't expect too many videos from him. If he does do videos, I'm not quite sure what he would do. Probably, if he's going to do gaming videos, it's going to be much more calmer games. Probably more laid back, a little bit more idle games. But we'll have to see. Let's move on to the next one here, which is Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, or Lizzie for short, she is a female. Her particular species is a cat. We aren't actually able to pin down an actual species. Um, she is a feline cat. A lot of her color scheme is whites, really light blues, with a little tiny bit of darker blues. So yeah, her personality-wise, Liz is energetic, to say that. I am probably absolutely destroying spelling right now. Energetic. You know what I'm going for. She's hyper. There we go. That's a word my brain can spell. Um, she's very hyper, very outgoing. She loves to be with people. She's, the nicest person in the world. She's always one to give you a second chance, or a third, or 100th. She always tries to help people to be better. So, yeah. The fun fact about her is that her favorite show happens to be Hannah Montana. Now, this was if you happen to keep up with Hannah Montana, there was some controversy with her about something or other recently. She used to watch her before then. So, yeah. Elizabeth, content-wise for the channel, she loves to do art. She's a huge drawer and artist. Actually, this little PFP that she drew, that is actually one of her art. She loves to do a little bit more cutesy, chibi art, but she loves to do art in general. The one thing about her is that most likely you aren't going to be hearing her, because of, the fact she's female and the body's male. She kind of hates her voice. So most likely you won't hear her. She does have a habit of putting on music when she's drawing. So yeah. That covers Elizabeth. Now those are the main four. You have Merlin, James, Luke, and Liz. Those are what I call the first generation. When we were first presenting ourselves, this is who first came forwards. In this particular instance, I'm going to be referred to as Gen 1. So this, I didn't do this. That's all Gen 1. I'm going to switch colors now, and we're going to move on to Gen 2. The first of our Gen 2 is Shadow. Now, Shadow, or Shade, as he is usually known by us, is a griffin. Specifically, red-tailed hawk snape. If you don't know what a snape is, it's a snow leopard. But he is a griffin. He tends to lean more towards his avian side or bird side. So, he still has the front talons, but he leans more toward, for biology-wise, more towards the avian. Personality-wise, Shadow can be a bit of a coin toss, and that's because, actually, to hit back on his species, he's red-tailed hawk and snape, with a small, tiny mix of phoenix. Now, you're probably all thinking phoenix, okay, big fiery bird, but for him it's the reverse. He's thinking much more ice, cold, and that's actually very true of him. His personality-wise isn't that way. He's not cold or, hard with people. Generally not. I mean, if you upset him, he will be, but generally in, casual conversation, Shade is a bit more laid back like Luke. Um, Not quite as laid back as Luke, but is a little bit more, um, a little softer, at least when he gets into his older phases. For Shade, he goes through phases, and this is where the coin toss for his personality comes through. In his younger phases, he's much more energetic. So phase 1, he's much more energetic. So hyper, since I can't spell. And apparently I'm writing over myself. So he's much more hyper. Think, 5 to 10-year-old. They're hyper. They're going to be asking random questions, running around doing stuff that they probably shouldn't. In that sense, that's much more of his phase 1. He goes into kind of a phase 2, which is much more teen-like. He gets a little bit more angsty. So in that sense, he can be a little bit rebellious. He still has that little bit more energy. He's more hyper, kind of. And then he goes into kind of a phase 3. Now, for him, there are 4 phases. For phase 3, that's the adult. And that's where he's more laid back, generally a little bit softer. He thinks a little bit more about what he's doing. He's not quite as reactionary. Yeah. And then we have the phase 4, which is what I called old age. That's not how you spell old age. I don't like English if you can't tell. But that generally, once he hits phase 4, he's going to be sleeping more often. He doesn't have the energy that he did in phase 1 or 2. And he tends to be a little bit more philosophical, for lack of a better term. But yeah. The fun fact about Shade is his favorite season is actually winter. And no, this isn't because it's darker and wetter. He actually loves the snow. And the main thing for this actually ties in with what he'd most likely bring to the channel, and that is his sculpting. Shade is a huge sculptor. Because that's how you spell that, right? I'm hoping you can actually read that. There we go. That should be easier to read. Huge is a hit. Shade is a huge sculptor. He likes to mess with clay. When it's winter, he loves to make snowmen. He actually made one a while back. That was a griffin. Which, to be honest, was absolutely amazing. He got quite a bit of detail into it. But Shade's the sculptor. He likes to make things with his hands. He's planning on going into woodworking. So those are the 2 main things that you're probably going to find from him for the channel. Our next person is Nami. For those of you who don't recognize that, that's a bit more of a Japanese influence. Izunami, we usually refer to her as either Izu, so Izu, or just straight up Nami. That's usually the nickname we refer to her with. She is a female, so Liz isn't the only one that's a female here. We actually have 3 females. Nami being one of those. Personality-wise, Nami can be a little bit of a hard. She tends to be a little bit harder, harsher. Um, she doesn't get along with people well. Um, she doesn't expect the best. She always prepares for the worst. She's kind of got that post-apocalyptic mentality. Um, and this is not to beat down on her. Once you get to know her, she'll open up a little bit. She can be nicer. But she tends to be a little prickly. Um, she's quick to anger, which isn't great, but she's a little more reactionary when it comes to that. The fun fact for her is her favorite movie is actually Nightmare Before Christmas by Tim Burton. If you haven't seen it, go and see it. It's a great movie, but she really loves it. So yeah, that covers that. Most likely for her videos, much like Liz, she's probably not going to talk, and that's not actually for the same reason as Elizabeth. Liz doesn't like to talk because her voice and the body's voice don't match, and she hates that. For Nami, it's more, she doesn't like to talk. She doesn't get along with people. She doesn't like to talk with people. So less like she may talk in some of her videos. And word of warning there's a possibility there can be profanity in those videos. I will make sure to label them properly, and if I can, I'll go through and edit them and bleep them out. But just a word of warning there's a possibility of profanity in her videos. The rest of us try to refrain as best as possible from using profanity. But yeah, her video the type of video she's most likely to contribute to the channel is much more nitty gritty games. So those are more first person shooters, horrors. She generally likes those kind of darker themed video games. For example, she happens to love the Doom series. That should give you a basic idea of where she's probably going to give videos for. But yeah, so I'm going to put that up. Whew. A little bit of art there. Make sure to label that. Then we're going to move over here, actually all the way up here to Quizzler. And yes, that is actually how you pronounce his first name. They're going to dislike me for that. That's how you pronounce their name. Quizzler is actually, they don't identify with one gender or the other. So, I mean, they'll reasonably, I can't think of the word because brain fart, but they'll respond to he, she, they, them. And they prefer the term they, them, but will respond to any others. Quizzler's species is a bit of a mishmash, but I'm going to cover the general. The general species for Quizzler is a dragon. Now, you're probably all thinking Eastern dragons, which are, big, 4 legs, wings, breathes fire. Quizzler's specific type is actually closer to that of a lindworm. For those of you who don't know dragon mythology, a lindworm is much more serpentine. It only has 2 front legs, generally doesn't have wings, or if it does, it has very small, useless wings. Sorry, I'm a dragon nerd. But yeah, so he is a dragon in the basic of senses. Um, I could go on and on for hours about specifics about Quizzler and his species, but we're going to cover it as just a dragon. So if I were to give you a basic rundown of his body, you'd have the head, a body, and you'd have his arms. Have their arms. Excuse me. Um, I make that mistake a lot, actually. But yeah, that gives you the basic idea of, how their body's built. They don't have wings. They don't actually have legs. For those of you who are familiar with D&D Pathfinder, they're much similar to the Naga in that sense. Pathfinder Naga are a little bit off because they don't have arms. But those more serpentine races. You could almost think of Quizzler as a big serpent with arms. But yeah. Moving on to personality-wise, Quizzler is an interesting person. They tend to think everything logically. So they'll be very logical in their responses. They don't tend to have a lot of emotion behind their responses or their words. They tend to pull the emotion out. They see everything much more in black and white. Sometimes a bit of gray, but usually more black and white. Quizzler, much like me, is a tinkerer. He likes to mess with things. He likes to, tinker with things. Yeah. Sorry, I just did that. I shouldn't have. Sorry, I went a little out of order on this. Okay, the fun fact about Quizzler is that his favorite type of music is actually a mellow pop. Now, mellow pop and much more. So mellow pop is, it's got the emotion behind it and everything, which kind of contradicts their personality. I'm still working on that. So yeah. The video games, so the videos that Quizzler is more likely to be in or appear in is much more gaming, more casual gaming. They like management games where they can, say, okay, this needs to go here, this needs to go here. They like to organize, so those type of games. But yeah. So that covers Quizzler. I'm going to put over here management gaming. And over here we have Daybreaker. Now Daybreaker, as you notice, doesn't have a picture. And the reason behind that is actually very explainable. We don't actually know what Daybreaker looks like. They've shown up as multiple forms. One sense form was one that was more cat-like, feline. They tend to go more towards a Bengal cat, not a tiger, a Bengal cat. Whereas another form was much more velociraptor. Their color schemes tend to include more of a neon green. They like silvers, bright shiny colors like that. So silvers, they like silvers. They like really, really bright greens like this, except brighter. But yeah, so they like those kind of colors. I'm going to pause this real quick because someone just came home, so I'll be right back. Okay, and I'm back. So, Daybreaker you know, they love those silvers, the bright greens. Moving on from there, their personality-wise, Daybreaker is an interesting person personality-wise. They tend to be more, for lack of a better term, psychopathic. They love horror. They like those nitty-gritty, suspenseful feelings. And they tend to put that on other people. But they don't mean it in kind of this mean way. It's more like they're trying to share their joy. And that's one of the weird things with Daybreaker is, they don't quite understand other people, so they can get frustrated when someone does something they didn't expect or isn't reacting how they wanted them to react. So Daybreaker is an interesting person in the personality-wise. To give you, this kind of ties into the fun fact, but Daybreaker loves horror. Any kind of horror, jump scares is their favorite. We try to refer to Daybreaker as a they, them, because, again, we don't know their physical body or anything like that. But anyways, the fun fact is, they love horror, jump scares, suspense. They do that a lot. Content-wise for Daybreaker, they're more likely not to actually do videos, and instead they love to write short stories. A lot of these short stories are horror-based, suspense, but at some point I will be, possibly putting those up in videos where I read them, or something like that, or maybe we'll animate them. We'll just have to see. But yeah. Now you're probably wondering, okay, why did he skip up here, right? You have this one last person over here, and that is Lilith Lamore. Now Lilith, it is spelled with two L's, Lillith, not to be confused with Lilith, I think she was a demon queen, which is spelled with one L. We usually refer to her as Lily, spelled again with two L's. She's been and yes, Lily, is a female, and is actually the youngest of the family. She's just coming into that kind of mid-adult, purgatory area, so, 18, 19, 17, 18, 19, right in there. And that's what we gauge the age to be about, based upon personality and, everything. Her particular species is, she's the most human-like of us all, in the species-wise. But her species is a bit of a mishmash. She does have deer, she has human, she has a hyena, actually. So deer, human, hyena, and reptile. And that's all kind of mishmashed into her own body. For example, she has hooves instead of feet. Her hands are much more hyena-like. She has a reptile tail. She has antlers, actually, surprisingly. Despite female deer not having antlers, I know. But yeah. She's a bit of a mishmash when it comes to her species. Personality-wise, Lily is very shy. She's very, very, very shy around new people, most likely you aren't going to meet her just out of the blue. She'll already know a lot about you before you even meet her. But she's very curious. That's how you spell curious. She's very curious. She loves to know things. She likes to, see new things, learn new things. She's a tinkerer like me and Quitch. She loves to mess with things. And she loves to meet new people, but she's very, very shy around them. The fun fact about her is that her favorite animal is actually the deer. As shown in her species, she loves deer. We actually have some that stop by the house every once in a while. She loves to go out there and feed them, make sure they're okay. A lot of you are going, oh my god, they feed wild animals. And you would be correct. Yes, she does go out there, and she's gotten one of them to eat out of our hand. So yeah, that is the thing. Content-wise, because Lily is so shy, she's most likely not going to show up in videos. She might, be there every once in a while, just happen to show up. But that's more like a coincidence than an actual planned thing. But yeah. And yeah, I believe that covers everybody. But yeah. Now the thing is we have our Gen 1s again, which are here. I'm gonna write it. I'll write it over here. So we have our Gen 1s, which are Merlin, James, Liz, and Luke. In fact, I'm going to put that up here. Okay, that's the Generation 1. So the first people that showed up, Merlin obviously being the absolute first because he is the host. And then we have our Gen 2s, which began with Shade or Shadow. Then it went into Nami. That's totally an N. Who later showed up, and then that developed into Quitch. I'm going to pause this real quick. And then from Quitch, we went into, I believe the next one after that was Lily, actually. And then the very last one to fully show themselves and acknowledge their existence was Daybreaker. And you'll notice that a lot of times I will either refer to Daybreaker as their full name, or I will use just simply Day. But yeah, that covers our 2 generations, which that line did not divide properly. There we go. And yeah, so that's where we're going to end off this video. If you enjoyed this, let me know. If there's any additional information I can give, that would be great. If you would like to go down, watch the rest of our videos, subscribe, like, do all of that, and I will see you in the next video. Alright.